Hello and welcome to the video review series for AP World History Unit 0, the Prologue. What happened in human history before 1200 CE? This video is for many different types of people. Those that want to go back and refresh their memory as to what we've done before, those who've been absent, and those who haven't done very good on the quizzes. Now, for all of those groups, please don't sweat it. If you've been absent, I will give you ample time to make sure to make up the quizzes. If you didn't do very well, we can talk about retakes once we get into the semester a little bit deeper. And number three, there will be no test on this unit, but the concepts that we're talking about are very important for you to understand for future units. Overall, when we talk about prologue, a prologue is essentially leading up to an introduction. So, what we're really looking at is this big block of human history and understanding why early humans developed these things called processes to fulfill their survival and prosperity. And how did these really affect human life? Meaning, how mostly it got better. So when you look at the big picture, we subdivide this gigantic period of time into different ways that people lived. We started off with hunting and gathering. Then we moved to agricultural villages caused by the agricultural revolution. We talked about the four core civilizations and river valleys, which became states, and finally empires. So this does follow along the way that the prologue chapter does, and I would encourage you to have that beside you as we go through. Also, what I would also encourage you to take notes of some of the key things that we go over, especially definitions of empires, civilizations, what the agricultural revolution was, and what caused it. Now, when we talk about the first part of this unit, essentially what we're looking at is we're giving ourselves kind of a structure. This structure is called pieces, and it's a way that you analyze the way people live their lives. So our learning target for this video is how do we use pieces to analyze a society? So we go back to our early question, our overall question. Why did early humans develop new processes to survive and prosper in the time period from 10,000 BCE to 1200 CE? How did these new processes affect human life? Now, before we get into this, we have to define what we mean by processes. And I would make sure to write this down if you missed that day's class. A process or a global process is simply a pattern, technology, or a method that humans use to survive and prosper. If you remember that we defined history as how humans survive and prosper, these are the things that they do, the methods, the patterns, and the technology that they use to survive and prosper. Think of these like lenses. So when we look at them, we can use the pieces to kind of explain them. So there is political global processes. The job of a government is to promote survival and prosperity. There is innovation and scientific knowledge. There is environmental global processes, using the environment to survive and prosper. Cultural, developing a body of knowledge based in religious and non-religious topics that help people survive and prosper. Economics, using scarce resources to get what people need and want to survive and prosper. And social structure. So I included a handout. I would have that handout handy and open on my computer as we go through this. If not, go ahead and print it out and read through it to review. So when we look at the political process, the first P, we're basically answering questions about a society that we study. So the first question is, how did states gain and lose power? Well, when we look at different types of people, let's say Forsyth County, Governments gain power through elections, and they lose power through losing those elections. The next question is basically maintaining power. How do states rule? And when we look at Forsyth County, we have many ways that they maintain their power. First of all, they unify them through common ideas, such as the protection of rights. Administration means laws, and providing basically means providing people the opportunity to survive and prosper. Think of it like this. These are all these are all things that governments do to make sure people survive and prosper. Now, when we talk about the political system and how they affected the group, when we talk about Forsyth County, I mean, we have divisions between Democrats and Republicans, people that want certain things. And also, we see states, the United States being one, interacting with other states. Now, please don't sweat and think this is all sorts of complicated. It really isn't. When you read about a society, you're simply answering the questions. The next piece is innovation. Now, innovation includes technology and scientific knowledge. So, the first thing we want to know is what was the new technology? What was the new scientific knowledge that states developed? In Forsyth County, we have all sorts of technology that people use to survive and prosper. Too many to name, but we also know how to manipulate our environment, create medicine. This is all the scientific knowledge. Now, how did this improve life? Anything about scientific knowledge and technology makes life better. We just want to know specifically how. So, for example, since we have so much medical knowledge, okay, it improves life because we feel better, we last longer, we live longer. But also, the last question, intended and unintended consequences, we do see population growth with people living longer. So, again, people use technology and scientific information to survive and prosper, and this is what we look at in the innovation theme. The next theme is the environment, and the environment is the stage that history is played on. So when we study society, the first thing we look for is ways that humans have adjusted to their environment. In Forsyth County, we have air conditioning, we have school buildings, we have roads. But also we look at how humans change their environment. And we have one of the greatest changes to the environment, and that is Lake Lanier. Now, some subtopics within this theme or this piece, this process, is essentially population growth and migration. Culture is defined as a set of knowledge that's passed down from generation to generation. So what we need to know is we need to know what ideas and beliefs make up that. Now, sometimes it's secular, and secular means non-religious, and sometimes it's religious. But what they govern is the way people interact with each other. And so we come up with these ideas, and then we spread them across the population. This is where education and media comes in Forsyth County. Now, we also look at how does the ideas and beliefs that make up culture influence the other processes. So, for example, one of our ideas is freedoms. So, when we look at the economic process or theme, remember, theme and process is interchangeable. Essentially, we promote freedom in economics to buy what we want within reason. When we look at the government's job is to promote freedom. So this may seem very complex, but simply what we're doing is we're looking at the religious and the non-religious ideas and how they're spread to people and how they influence the development of the society. Economic theme or the economic process is basically how humans use scarce resources to satisfy their wants and needs to essentially survive and prosper. So when we look at this theme, we look at how do they use production, meaning making stuff. How do they use exchange? How do they trade to satisfy their wants and needs? One of the things that Forsyth County exports is chickens. Chickens do very well in this part of Northeast Georgia. So essentially, we sell the chickens to various people in other parts of the world, bring in the money, and we use that income to essentially buy oil that we don't have or other resources. Now, the government or the state is usually very involved. So in Forsyth County, there is certain things that you cannot produce and trade, most importantly, drugs. Now, later we get into economic systems. So I'm going to save this when we get later on in the course. But of course, what we're talking about in Forsyth County is capitalism. And we also see how these decisions influence the other processes. So obviously, in Forsyth County, the amount of wealth people have determine their social standing. The government goes out of their way to promote capitalism. And then culture would be we're a very materialistic culture. We like stuff. When you talk about the social theme, this is simply social classes, gender roles, roles between men and women, and how different ethnicities kind of work together. So, obviously, in Forsyth County, people are put into social classes according to their wealth. It is a very patriarchal, male dominated society, but women do have some rights. And different ethnicities are welcomed into our society. Even though there is racism, they're welcome into society and included. Okay, so I've just given you a ton of information. Let's boil it down to the main points. This is a system of analysis, of studying a civilization or a group of people through different lenses. And simply what we do is we answer the questions. On the handout that I've included, basically it gives you those questions. And this is something that we're going to practice a great deal throughout the semester and the school year. Now, this is going to end part one. Part two is going to introduce ourselves to hunting and gathering people and how they lived.